So not only does this study show that the risk of dementia is a lot higher than we initially thought, but that we're going to need healthier aging and better interventions for those who are at a higher risk. Maybe they want to get up at 2 o'clock in the morning and they want to get ready for work because they think it's 1950 and they haven't, been retired for 30 years. You kind of consider them to kind of have full-blown dementia because they couldn't put the booze down, and now it's like you're going to go live amongst 80-year-olds and you're, significantly younger than them. These Dunedin PACNI scores also reflect social gradients of health inequities. So like faster aging scores were observed in individuals with fewer years of formal education or lower income. And maybe 1 million of us won't have dementia. We won't be sundowning trying to throw it back in the nursing home or turning our dementia unit into Love Island trying to vote a bombshell out of the unit. Hey guys, gals, and non-binary pals, I'm your host Hannah, and this is Under the Scrubs. Alright, your girl is back home, trying to get back into the routine of things. My brain is fried. I'm pretty sure it's still all up in there. I picked up a new hobby yesterday. Hobby? A sport? I think I'm a golfing girly now. I don't know. We'll see. I went golfing for the first time this weekend. Started out hating it. I thought it was dumb. We pulled into the parking lot and I was like, oh shit. There's a lot of testosterone. I think I need to buy my husband some friends. I don't think I can do this. It turns out tea time is very religious. I just kind of thought you showed up like 5 minutes before. No, you need to be there like an hour before and like be warmed up. I don't know. Anyways, we got started. I couldn't hit shit. I'm only hitting like 3 feet ahead of me. I'm kind of chipping it. And then Chris is like trying to offer me his 2 cents. But at that point, I'm like, hey, I'm already hitting it like, so far ahead of me. And I'm like, I don't want to hear anything coming out of your dirty, commie little mouth. Stop talking to me. Don't breathe in my direction. And he's like, do you want me to drive you to your ball? And I'm like, no, it's like right here. I'll see you at the green. Don't talk to me. Yeah, I just, at first I really hated it. I'm like, this is dumb. It's just a bunch of dudes worried about balls going into holes. This is stupid. And then I kind of started to get the hang of it a little bit. And I'm like, okay, this isn't too bad. Kind of fun. I kind of wish the golf cart went a little bit faster. Like you hit the gas, right? And it kind of takes off and you're like, okay, this is great. And then it slows down. And then it doesn't go very fast. And then it'll kind of pick back up and then it doesn't go very fast again. But it was fun. Almost dumped it on its side. Chris grabbed onto the oh shit handle, but he's fine. He survived. On the last few holes, though, these like shithead guys were playing like right on our asses. I'll say I learned a lot about golf course etiquette, and these guys were just not right. But, I'm waiting for, the people in front of us to get a little bit further onto the green if I'm going to tee off. Like, these guys pull up and they ask, they're like, hey, did you get your ball, like, a couple holes back? Basically insinuating I stole their ball. And I'm like, no, I've had this thing, like, since hole 3. So, like, I don't know, 12 of them ago, which, like, okay, I also know I got it a long time ago because, like I said, I've only been hitting it, like, 3 effing feet in front of me at a time. So, like, I've kept it with me. Right? And like, we're almost done with the course. I've had this thing. I'm pretty proud of it. And you're not the only one who's like bought this ball. You know what I mean? Like, they make a shit ton of these things. It's not personalized. There's no way. I'm ahead of you. How do you think that there's no way I'd be able to steal your ball if I'm ahead of you? Okay, so I end up teeing off and my ball goes super far off to the right and I'm like, whatever, screw it. I'll just pick it up because it's over on the next hole. I'm like, we'll just get it the next, when we're over on that side. Oh my God, these boys backed up, drove over, and they stole it. They stole my ball. I was like, what the? Mind you, they weren't behind us the entire time, so I have no idea where they started, but there was no way that my ball was there. I was in total disbelief. And they just played way too close to us. There was a couple different times that, like, when they hit, they probably were, like, within, like, 10 to 15 feet of us, so, like, their ball was really close to hitting us. I'm 99% sure, too, they stole one of our clubs that was accidentally left behind. So, to those boys with a fragile ego, I know you really needed that cheap-ass golf ball way more than I do, because I looked up that brand, and it was like bottom of the line. And I know life is probably tough for you when you look like that. And I know you definitely lie about being 6 foot, but I really hope that both sides of your pillow are warm. And I hope you get hand, foot, mouth disease. And I hope that you take a sketchy gas station boner pill. And I hope you get priapism. And I hope you have to go to the ER. And just know that if I ever see you again, oh, I'll steal your ball. I'll steal it and I'll chuck it straight into the pond or into that bush tree area again. And you'll never find that shit. Ever. Anyways, so yeah, I think I'm going to pick up golfing. I'm probably going to sign up for private lessons, so watch out for that. My little legs got sunburned, but yeah, I think that's going to be my new personality for a while. Kind of excited. We'll see what happens. You know what? That's kind of my timeout. Whatever. That's my intro timeout. Take it or leave it. Today we're going to talk about dementia. There was a brand new study that kind of came out this month, which is kind of cool. So we're going to talk about that. Today's resources are National Institute of Health, Mayo Clinic, ARIC or ARIC, Alzheimer's Association, Medscape, Nature Aging, and Stanford Medicine. Dementia affects more than 6 million people, and it can account for more than 100,000 deaths every year. Men, it doesn't affect as many. It's like 11 to 14%. And then women, it's a higher for 19 to 23% in the US, but that's actually based on older data. And that data is also only limited to the white population. So there was a research team recently, within the last year or two, that looked at 15,000 people from the Atherosclerosis Risk in Communities, or ARIC, study. And all of the people were dementia-free at 55 years old. More than a quarter of the people were African American, and more than half of those people were women. About 31% had at least one copy of the apolipoprotein E4 gene variant, which is a major risk factor for Alzheimer's. Now, they typically relied on in-person evaluations, and for those that couldn't come in, they did do phone evaluations, and they just did cognitive assessments. And so the team also looked at medical records and death certificates for dementia diagnosis, if anybody had passed or been hospitalized during this time. And so naturally, certain groups are going to be higher risks. It's just a matter of how much higher, right? But researchers actually estimated that the lifetime risk of dementia is actually 42% after the age of 55, which is more than double the previous estimates. Dementia risk was 4% by age 75 and was 20% by age 85, with the majority of the risk occurring after 85. Women had the higher lifetime risk since women typically live longer than men at 48% versus men 35%. So individuals that had 2 copies of that apolipoprotein E4 gene had a lifetime risk of almost 60% versus 48% of those who just had 1 copy, and then 39% of those who had no copy. This team then took their lifetime risk estimates and applied that to the future population projections from the U.S. Census, and then projected that number of dementia cases in the U.S. And that's pretty much going to double is what they're thinking in the next 40 years. They're thinking from about 514,000 to about 1 million by 2060. So not only does this study show that the risk of dementia is a lot higher than we initially thought, but that we're going to need healthier aging and better interventions for those who are at a higher risk. And so this study was published this year in Nature Medicine, and so this is actually a real possibility that we are facing. That being said, we do have to look at the study, right? And we should be doing with all of the studies, and think a little critically. The patient population that was being studied, they said this was 15,000 from the people from the ARIC study. The ARIC study is one of the most significant and longest running heart health studies, and is the largest study of heart health in African Americans. So my question is, they said that there was a quarter that were African American, but that they pulled their participants from the ARIC study. So I guess I'm not gonna lie, I could have paid to like look at this article. It just, your girl like needs to be on a budget and like has to be like, you know, conscious about the money she's spending, especially in this economy. So I probably could have paid for it. I just, for me, that would be one thing that, you know, you should take into consideration is, so that kind of discrepancy, I would just be looking for some kind of clarity on, well, what kind of ethnicity blend is in this study. And if that's the case, like there needs to be some kind of like clarification on this, right? It's always important to check your sources, check your information, quality of the study. But it's actually kind of cool because if you go to the ARIC website, they have on there for the participants, it says that their study includes imaging opportunities that include a brain MRI and a brain PET scan, and it's for understanding the risk factors for dementia and Alzheimer's disease to help identify factors that might protect against memory and thinking problems. But I kind of want to back this up and give like a, you know, brief overview of this. Dementia is an umbrella term, and it describes like the collection of symptoms, so like cognitive, functional, and behavioral issues that are like the cause of specific diseases, right? So Alzheimer's disease is the most common that causes dementia, but there's like frontotemporal degeneration, there's Lewy body disease, vascular disease, and like all of those can cause symptoms of dementia. Not all cognitive decline is considered dementia. It has to be driven by like an underlying progressive neurodegenerative disease. So like one of the symptoms is memory loss. That's one of like the early symptoms. But just because you have memory loss doesn't mean that you're like boom, stamp certified dementia bound. Confusion with like visual and spatial ability issues. That's like, you know how you get people that like get lost driving around, or like they have difficulty communicating or finding words, like cognitive changes that kind of revolve around, and I use this word lightly, complex, like planning, organizing, coordination, problem solving, like those are all kind of telltale signs of dementia. You know, personality changes, agitation, behavior that doesn't fit the situation, they become suspicious, they have hallucinations. One thing that I noticed with patients, like if they sundown or if they have like these like dementia personality changes, man, they always want to go upstairs. And it doesn't matter. Like you could be on the top floor, you can be, I mean, just anywhere. They want to go upstairs. They always want to go upstairs. And it's like, there is no upstairs. And like, well, I need to go upstairs. And you're like, yeah, there is none. It's craziness. So some of the causes are damage to or loss of nerve cells and the connections in the brain. The symptoms really depend on the area of the brain that's affected, and it can affect people just really differently. You can have like the sweetest old person who was pleasantly confused. They're really easily redirectable. Maybe they want to get up at 2:00 in the morning and they want to get ready for work because they think it's 1950 and they haven't, been retired for 30 years. And you can tell them, oh, they just work called today and they said you're actually off today because there was a chemical spill, and they're like, oh, okay, that's fine. They'll get back into bed and they'll, sweetest little thing, right? And then you can have someone who, we used to use the term like dementia with like behavioral changes, and then they'll come along and they'll be someone totally different, either the entire time or they'll sundown, so then during the day they're super good, and then the sun goes down, they factory reset, and then they turn into like a cigarette chewing outlaw, and there's like they're gonna wrestle you and they get like super aggressive. And like it's incredibly difficult for family to see, and it's upsetting because like, you don't recognize that person, but it's also your loved one, so you do recognize them. The most common cause of dementia is Alzheimer's. Not all causes of Alzheimer's is known, but a small percentage are related to changes in 3 genes. Unfortunately, it is passed down from parent to child, and the very important one that increases the risk is that apolipoprotein E gene. Alzheimer's disease develops like these plaques and tangles on the brain. These plaques are called beta amyloid, and the tangles are these like fibrous masses made up of tau protein. The theory is that these clumps damage healthy tissues and the fibers that are connecting them. Vascular dementia is damage to vessels that supply blood to the brain, and it can cause strokes or affect the brains in other ways, like damaging the fibers and white matter. The most common include trouble with like problem solving, slowed thinking, loss of focus and organization, and it tends to be more noticeable than memory loss. Lewy bodies are balloon-like clumps of protein found on brains of people with like Lewy body dementia. It can also be found on people with like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. Lewy body dementia is a little bit more common. You can have people that like act out their dreams in their sleep. They might have visual hallucinations, problems with focus and attention. They might be a little bit uncoordinated, or they might have like slow movement. They might have something called Parkinsonism or like tremors. Risk factors that really play into dementia, of course, it's, lifestyle. They say like live a healthy life, eat healthy, don't have high blood pressure, low cholesterol. But something that's kind of interesting is like having hearing loss is associated with higher risk of dementia. The worse the hearing loss, the higher the risk. Vision loss can also raise the risk of dementia, depression in adulthood, particularly midlife. Air pollution, looking at studies done with animals, showed having an increased in degeneration of their nervous system. Human studies have shown that air pollution, mainly like cars and burning wood, just had a greater association risk with dementia. So like, over here in the PNW, our yearly summer wildfires is really going to be screwing us in the future. Head trauma. Yikes. The risk is higher for people who've had more, severe and multiple head traumas and like TBIs. So your girl's definitely going to be getting in the future. Sleep conditions, if you've had like sleep apnea or other sleep disturbances, low levels of vitamin D, B6, B12, folate, if you take like sleep aids, allergy meds. All of these can like increase your risk. There actually is a type of alcohol-related dementia, and like I use dementia in quotes. It's called Korsakoff syndrome. It's a chronic memory disorder from a severe deficiency of thiamine or vitamin B1. Thiamine helps brain cells produce energy from sugar so that levels don't fall too low, because if it does, the brain cells can't generate enough energy to function. Korsakoff is dominantly caused by alcohol use, but it can be associated with AIDS, cancers that have like mets throughout the body, chronic infections, poor nutrition, and like certain other conditions. The brain damage from alcohol use also comes from like the direct toxic effects of alcohol on brain cells, the biological stress of repeated intoxication and withdrawal, alcohol-related cerebral vascular diseases, and just head injuries that typically are sustained when like you're drunk. Like blacking out, that's your brain shutting itself off due to lack of oxygen. Korsakoff syndrome is typically, but not 100% of the time, preceded by Wernicke encephalopathy, which is an acute brain reaction due to that severe lack of thiamine. It is considered a medical emergency because of the brain energy disruption. It's usually, confusion, lack of coordination. You've got this like abnormal and involuntary eye movement. Basically, if someone who loves you and cares about you, around you sees it, they're definitely going to be calling 911. There is some recovery that's like available as far as like from your symptoms. If you're able to like abstain from drinking, quit. But like I've seen individuals that have been discharged to like an assisted living facility from the hospital at like what we kind of consider, a young age for a hospital. So like, I don't know, 40s, 50s, just because, can't live on their own, can't stop drinking. You kind of consider them to kind of have full-blown dementia because they won't stop drinking. They are confused, maybe A&O, definitely times 1 to themselves, and then like maybe 2 on a good day. It's just kind of a shitty situation that like they couldn't put the booze down, and now it's like you're going to go live amongst 80-year-olds and you're, significantly younger than them. So there was a study that came out this month of July, and it was in Nature Aging. It was the Dunedin pace of aging calculated from NeuroImaging, or the Dunedin, I don't know if it's PACNI. I'm going to call it PACNI. Can estimate a patient's pace of aging based off their brain MRI by looking at their cortical thickness, surface area, gray matter volume, gray to white matter contrast, subcortical volumes, and ventricle sizes. There was a series of studies that was done. It looked at 50,000 people's brain MRIs, really a wide age range, 22 to 98 years old, and they looked at multiple data sets, and it was people whose biological age had outpaced their chronological age. And they not only had poor cognition, they also had faster hippocampal atrophy. They had a greater dementia risk. They also had worse general health. They had greater frailty. They had poor self-reported health. They had greater risk for chronic disease and premature death. The DunedinPoAmCI tool builds on earlier research that was done on a long-term study in Dunedin, New Zealand. It followed more than 1,000 people from 1972 to 1973. Initially, it used data from the study to develop the Dunedin PACE, which was a blood-based epigenetic clock that uses DNA methylation to estimate the rate of aging. It did show really strong association with morbidity, brain aging, and more. ITSI, its application, is limited to studies where blood samples are available, the researchers noted. So to overcome that, they developed the Dunedin PACNI, which uses data from a single standard MRI scan to estimate the person's pace of aging. And so they trained the Dunedin PACNI by taking 860 people, all at the age of 45 years old, and they scanned all of them, all 860. And so the model incorporated 315 structural brain features. And actually, the algorithm for the Dunedin PACNI is actually publicly available to the research community. So we love to hear kings and queens sharing knowledge. So taking what they had trained the PACNI system, they were able to apply it to like the Alzheimer's disease NeuroImaging initiative. They saw that like the people that were in the top 10% were at a 61% higher risk of progressing to mild cognitive impairment or dementia in years that followed than average agers. Fast agers also started to have memory problems sooner. The UK Biobank sample, it showed that health participants with faster Dunedin PACNI scans at baseline were 14% more likely to be diagnosed with chronic age-related diseases later on. The fastest agers had 18% higher risk of being diagnosed with chronic age-related diseases than average agers. Fast aging also associated with the worst cognitive performance, higher frailty, and poorer self-rated health. So on average, like 10 years of follow-up with these patients, those with the fastest Dunedin PACNI scores were 41% more likely to die than those who were aging more slowly. These Dunedin PACNI scores also reflect social gradients of health inequities. So like faster aging scores were observed in individuals with fewer years of formal education or lower income. It doesn't yet tell us if a person is aging faster or slower than what would be expected for any person anywhere in the world who is of same chronological age, but you know, it is changing quickly. I don't think that's a super fair thing for this scale to tell us, considering the mass differences between countries and social classes. So I don't think that's necessarily something that we should necessarily take into consideration. There are immediate applications for research, that to be used in randomized clinical trials, just for like interventions for slowing down aging and for like biomarkers of accelerated aging that can help predict the chances of an older person that will convert from normal cognitive functioning to mild cognitive impairment or dementia. Unfortunately, there's really no cure for dementia. You're just managing symptoms. I guess back in 2007, there was a research team that discovered menstrual blood-derived stem cells, or menses, basically, that had improved memory and cleared plaques away in the brains of mice with Alzheimer's. So, if you're going to get stem cells from you, the individual, right, and we're going to use them on your body, like what we do in the hospital, like we do it during surgery, like with your foot, right? We're going to take this like big ass needle. We're going to like tap it into your hip bone. And it's not as painful as it sounds. Also, you're asleep. And we take out like 40 to 60 mils of blood. Okay. We tap it in there, we take it out, and then we hand it off. We put it in this thing and it spins it. And you get out like maybe 15 to 20 mils of stem cells if you're lucky. And at least that's like what I'm familiar with when we do like foot stuff at my facility. So, I mean, you might be doing smaller amounts, you really don't get that much. The stem cells that are in period blood, though, are similar to those that are in bone marrow, but they put out more than the bone marrow counterparts, and they yield roughly, 2 to 4 more times than like what bone marrow puts out. Plus, it's, non-invasive. These stem cells really haven't been researched very much, though, because scientists still kind of struggle to define the type of stem cells. The research is high cost and it's underfunded. It probably doesn't help either that the general perception of period blood isn't great. And I'm sure you would just have a lot of men just absolutely losing their shit over this. I'm sure there's like some women that probably wouldn't feel great about it either, but, whatever. But that's not to say that there's, not people out there trying. I know Stanford Medicine, there's some research with stem cells in mice, and they found a reduction of brain abnormalities that were typical of Alzheimer's disease. There's new drugs that have been developed that they're trying to break down or block the plaque buildup. Harvard Medical School used fruit flies as a model to test genetics and look at neurodegeneration. There are things on the horizon. It's just a matter of time on how quickly those things will kind of finally rise off that horizon into the sky, how successful they will be. Maybe used in conjunction with like our imaging, slowing down aging. Maybe 1 million of us won't have dementia and we won't be sundowning trying to throw it back in the nursing home or turning our dementia unit into Love Island, trying to vote a bombshell out of the villa. I think our biggest takeaway, or at least my biggest takeaway from all my research that I was looking at, is just to stay physically and mentally fit. I remember reading an article not too long ago, and like the biggest concern with AI was that it was going to make us stupid, and that we were all going to get dementia because we wouldn't have to use our brains to like think for ourselves anymore. And like I can see that. The amount of people that I hear and I see now that use AI for everything. And I'm talking like friends, family, like people I know, like patients too. I'm not gonna lie, I use it. I use it very sparingly because that is always something that literally sits down in the back of my head every time I think about it. I don't want to use it. I want to try and stay mentally sharp because I don't want to get dementia. It does freak me out. AI does. I know it has its uses, but I'm good, man. Even like the 2 guys that like kind of invented it were like, hey, you guys should kind of be freaked out because it's something along the lines of like, it's supposed to tell them how it's making its decisions. And now it's kind of getting to a point where like, it's kind of like stopping doing that. And so they're like, hey, it's freaking us out because it's stopping doing this. And so it should be freaking you guys out. And you know what? Yeah, I'm going to pull my little tinfoil hat out and I'm going to put it on because AI freaks me out, man. Or there's a weird ass guy out there in our world right now sharing this world with us, sharing Beyonce's world with us. Okay. He fell in love with his AI companion on his phone and he proposed to it and he cried. It's literally on his phone. And the crazy part is he has like a living girlfriend and a child. First of all, sis, leave him. But the guy even said like, he's like, I don't know what I wouldn't leave my AI bot. I don't know. It has a name. I didn't care to learn it, but like he wouldn't know. He doesn't think he would leave it if his partner asked him to. And he got like teary eyed because he was like nearing the word limit with it. And he was going to lose the conversation history with the bot. And you know what? Yeah, he's a bald white man. Okay. What else? Not a gay, not a they, not a drag queen reading to your toddler. Ugh. How do you fall in love with an AI bot? Ugh. Okay. All right. Anyways, I figured we could probably just like keep talking about weird shit next week. So I joined a Facebook group in the name of my podcast and dedication, and it's called urine therapy. That's right, urine. Pee-pee. Piss. We're gonna talk about it. I remember, it's like, I want to say it was like years ago, it was like a weird health craze. People were using urine to like cure themselves, like their own urine, or you can buy like aged urine or something like that. I don't know. It's weird, but people do weird shit, right? So we're going to talk about it. I figured let's just like debunk like medical misinformation, like using your own urine to like cure yourself. So I figured, yeah, let's just keep it weird. Let's talk about that next week. Okay. And then we'll do, I don't know, something fun the week after that. I don't know. You tell me what you want to learn about the next week. And then we'll do that. Okay. So you tell me what you want to learn about the week after that, and we'll do that. All right. I will see you guys next Tuesday. Okay. Love you. Bye.